On this week's podcast, we have TJ Whitelaw, guitar player extraordinaire with a new EP called Homebody. All about the song is now.
This is all about the song.
Welcome to the 136th episode of All About the Song. I am your host, Michael McDonnell, and thank you for joining us. On the podcast today, we have TJ Whitelaw, a guitar player, producer, musical director, and he has a new EP out called Homebody, which is absolutely incredible. I first heard of TJ through his Instagram account where he posts videos of him playing guitar, and it is incredible to say the least. What an unbelievable player. And it was cool to see his accumulative effort come into this EP. It is a really great listen. I don't know if you out there listen to music the way I do, but I kind of fixate on a song and I just listen to it on repeat. So I'm still going through this EP very meticulously. I'm at track 2 at this point, but it is so dense with musical experience and it's just absolutely wonderful. So after listening to this episode, be sure to check his new EP out. The Sounds Like Songs Network is on YouTube. If you are watching, that's where you are. Please subscribe, hit the notification button. New episodes of All About the Song come out every Tuesday. So here we are, episode 136 of All About the Song with TJ Whitelaw. TJ, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and congratulations on the new EP. How does it feel to have it out in the world?
Man, it's so weird. In terms of like writing stuff, I'm very reclusive when it comes to creating stuff. I think it's more because of the sort of built-in insecurity of being a musician, of like wondering what your peers will think of it. That's mainly was why I haven't released anything for so long and like my life.
Right.
And so it's been really, really cool to see people who I like really respect, like Alex, like a bunch of my friends who are reaching out and telling me they like it. And before I released it, I was so nervous about how it would be received. But I'm just happy to get it out. And just happy.
I mean, it's incredible, and I got to say, like, the way that I stumbled upon you is your videos on Instagram, and thank you for doing those because it is something that I've looked forward to. Just watching you play the guitar and doing something that is so complicated, but doing it in such a simple way. Not so simple that I pick up my guitar and go like, wait, was that a B? Like, it's very incredible the way that you perform, but it was something that I was really looking forward to. And then to see that you had compiled it into like a tangible product, but also didn't also like push back or pull back per se and simplify anything. Like you really went for it, what I interpret as like your artistic voice, which is really cool to hear.
Yeah. Oh man, that means so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, the Instagram videos thing is weird. It started out as like almost like because I didn't go to school, so it almost like for music. So it almost like started out like years ago as a means of like keeping me in check and disciplined in my practice, and then it kind of morphed into this other thing, which has been more creative. And honestly, some of the ideas that are on the EP are things I just came up with whilst trying to create content or videos to play along to, which is a cool exercise, I guess, for like writing. It kind of gives you almost like some immediate stakes. It's like, is this thing going to be good? Is it going to be received well? And so I guess I was used to that feeling, but it definitely had to like push it and almost like compile it and compress it into this thing. That was a really difficult but like really rewarding kind of experience to have with it.
Well, no kidding. I mean, so I have so many questions to ask you, but first and foremost, you are someone that did not take guitar lessons to begin your musical journey.
Yeah, actually, okay, so I did for the first couple of years of when I was 11 till like I was 14.
Okay.
Um, an amazing teacher. He's very different from what I do now, but he was like this crazy metal guitar player who was like from my town of Orangeville, and he's like, um, yeah, just like a shredder. And so he taught me all this like shredding music, like Steve Vai, Ingve Malmsteen, Jason Becker, all these crazy shredders. Um, and he gave me this sort of like technical grounding for how I play. But from there, yeah, like the last I guess 13 years, I've been self-taught. And there was no theory; it was mainly he was just showing me songs, and I just that's how it kind of started.
Well, I think it's interesting and it makes a lot of sense. I suppose the metal background,
Mhm.
there's so much knowledge and theory in those crazy solos and songs that I kind of feel allows, especially guitar players, to translate into, you know, like jazz almost,
Yeah,
and different
yeah,
modes and methods of music and styles, and kind of have this skill set they might not have known that they had, and all of a
mhm,
sudden it's like, oh wait, I know this scale or this chord or these
mhm,
phrasings. And
yeah,
whereas I feel like when you kind of morph to like the bands of that were probably going all along at the same time when you're in high school, like the Strokes, the Hives, that taught you a different skill set that relates to music, contemporary music, but not so much in the like, I'm gonna solo or I know what the fifth of this or the seventh or the
yeah,
13th of this is, you know?
yeah, 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 yeah. That was
So,
the biggest hurdle
well, yeah, it's got to be. I mean,
for me.
well, so going and translating from, or even taking the lessons that you had started with, where
Mhm.
did you, I mean, at a certain point, did you fall in love before you got a guitar, or was this something that you started and found a voice throughout it?
I think it's the latter. So I wanted a guitar when I was younger. For some reason, I was never like super musically inclined. Like I didn't listen to much, whatever my parents listened to,
Right.
which was like the Eagles and Don McLean and all those like old folk singers and Americana stuff. My dad loves. And my mom loved more rock stuff. And I think with that, it kind of like I heard guitars going on and acoustics and all these like really beautiful songs, and I think that maybe drove it a little bit like subconsciously. But like yeah, it was kind of just I picked it up because I wanted something to do. Um, and a means of expression because when you're 11 or 12 like you're just like so much energy and you don't know what to do with all of it. And so yeah, that's kind of how it started. It just like when I first played it, I just yeah, it's almost like it begat like the passion for it. It wasn't really a priori, it was more just as it as it
Yeah.
happened. Yeah.
Was this, when you started playing music, was this something that people around you were also doing, or was this a very much like independent thing?
Yeah, it was very, very independent. Nobody I knew in my small town, like or school, really did any music of any kind. Um, I live in like I live in a very like blue collar area, so like the closest thing to like I guess like musical performance would have just been like yeah, like a talent show at the school in grade three, and maybe one person sang, and like the rest was just silliness. So it was more an independent journey, which I actually really appreciate because it made me disciplined when I was that age. So
Well, also, I think it perhaps like thinking, interpreting this to the musicality I hear now. I think it also probably allowed you not to have to rely on the others around you.
yeah,
Whereas, like
yeah,
I grew up with a very prolific drummer, Mike Sleeth, and he always got us. Always got us to the finish line, in a
yeah,
sense, because we could just look at him and go, "You just solo, just finish," and he just would play everything, and it was amazing, and we all sounded way better for that, but it also built up our confidence, and then
yeah.
went on our own journeys with playing alone, though.
Mhm.
As you progress through the music, and I know you started with metal, where did you kind of go with that musically? Like, what were your influences? Did they evolve? Did they change?
Yeah, they definitely between like in my form like the formative kind of high school years it changed drastically. So at first I was into like, yeah, Yngwie Malmsteen. He was like my god. Like I was obsessed with his writing. Even actually, I look back at it, and some of the concepts that he used were like really interesting, and like the neoclassical stuff. And so that actually gave me a good footing on like what harmony is in terms of the classical sense and the more traditional sense of harmony, and you know, and the metal version of a 2-5-1. You know, he'd do these crazy licks, and so that was like sort of from there it morphed. So I think when I was like 15 or 16, I think it was 16, it was my 16th birthday, and JP Sachs, we were best friends in high school, and we still are. And he gave me a D'Angelo record when I was 16. And as soon as I heard that, it like changed my entire world.
Wow.
Like flipped it upside down. Like I was like, how can it be this beautiful and concise and have this much soul? Because you know I'm like a white dude from the middle of the country. Like there was no reason for me to understand it, but like that record, Voodoo and Brown Sugar, like are just like monoliths. So I think everybody can take something from it, and so I totally did, and it like completely changed my world when I heard that stuff.
Oh, that's amazing. What a
Yeah.
what a great I remember seeing the music video on television,
Yeah.
and because it was just him basically naked,
Yeah.
and I never got past just his body, like not even like not even like that's so weird to say. Let
No,
me
I hear you. I
rephrase.
hear you.
But you know what I mean? It was like it was so polarizing, but I never listened to the music. It's so funny because I hear so many interviews by so many different artists, and they discuss how he changed music. And there's like that Questlove story about seeing
Yes.
D'Angelo in the audience and start playing to D'Angelo, and the whole
Yeah.
band is like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, I don't care. I'm just playing to him now." And it
Yes.
changed this whole like movement of music and feeling and flow. And but I
Yeah.
imagine for you know, for a metalhead, for a Yngwie Malmsteen guy, that's you're basically learning like, you know, you're learning the fastest things ever. To find that, it almost takes all that skill and just like slows it down and puts it into like this new gear. It's like taking a record player and going from like a 33 to a 45 almost.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's exactly how it felt too. Like, I was always under the impression that the more you play, the more expressive you are, and that record, Voodoo, that was the antithesis of more. It was just like completely held back, and yeah, just the attention to detail that they had with the tunes, and the way that they were able to say so much with playing so little. Just like I was like, how can this make me feel more in like 30 seconds of music than this entire record of this like shred guy make me feel? Like how can I feel this much in so short amount of time? The
Yeah,
first
yeah.
30 seconds of Untitled, you know, is like hit me, and it still does. um, I guess that's the power of that music. um, yeah, it's interesting to me still.
With, I guess, once you hit like, you know, after high school, let me think of a better way to ask this question. When did music
Yeah.
become like not only a be all end all for you and your enjoyment, but when did you want to take this into a professional status? Like, did you go to
Yeah.
post secondary? Did you focus on music?
Yeah, I think it was throughout high school. Um, I didn't really have that much of a social life. Because when I went to high school, everybody who went to that high school, particularly, um, you know, they all lived in the same area. I was kind of coming from like a very far away place. Um, I drove like an hour to get there, and everybody else lived there. So like, um, I was very reclusive, and so honestly, I think just between the ages of 15 and 16, like I said, like that's when I realized like this is I can't do anything else. It was almost just like I put horse blinders on myself and just realized that like this is all I can do. It's like there's no plan B. There's no backup plan. Like this is something I need to do. Um, yeah. So I think it was about 15 or 16 when I started realizing like this is a viable career path. All I need to do is work hard towards it, and that I can see where it could take myself if I work hard at it.
Yeah, absolutely. When did you first start playing shows? When did you first
Yeah.
start playing in a group? You mentioned that JP Sachs is one of your best friends. I imagine, and I know from personal experience, that having someone that you can talk to about these things is almost as progressive as, spending 18 hours a day practicing, is to have someone
Yeah.
to share this with.
Yeah. Well, I will say I don't talk about it often, but when I was like 14, 13, I actually made an album. It's not. I don't think it's out there right now. I'm sure if you looked hard enough, you could find it. But it was like a shred record. Like I made like a Steve Vai type record, and I didn't know what I was doing. It was all crazy, and I didn't know what structure was. I didn't know how to write a bridge and a B section, but I just kind of did this thing. And so I started playing live when I was like maybe 13, in just random, events in town and in, northern Ontario. And yeah, then so I had a band, but they weren't like musicians. They were just like friends I played music with.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I started playing shows with JP when I was like 15, 16. We started doing like the Beaches Jazz Festival and all those sorts of things. And that's what really like schooled me in terms of like how to be musical, was like playing with him. And yeah, when we first started playing, that was like a huge inspiration and learning experience around that time.
Coming to Toronto, I imagine like being in Orangeville, like Toronto's obviously like the big city. Just coming here, like, was it what you expected it to be? Did you have kind of like this idea of coming to Toronto or coming to the big city and like it will be different, it'll be more, it'll be less? What was that
Yeah.
experience like I've been to Orangeville a lot. I have family that
Yeah.
are from Orangeville, so I know that distance. But that's that's enough time in the car to get kind of nervous before you show up and start performing in places that it's different.
Yeah.
What was the experience like? If that was the experience for you?
Yeah, no, it totally was. I was super nervous because like here it's like I think it's similar in most small towns. Like if you're mildly good at something, people will notice because there's less people, especially in the art scene, like in small towns, less people are doing it. So there's more of a chance for you to stand out. But going to a place, yeah, like playing in Toronto with like, way more cultured people per capita. So it was like quite nerve-wracking to play in front of, especially at beaches and stuff, when I first did that first year of beaches in like, I don't remember, 2008 or 9. And that was like a huge awakening. It's like, wow, these people like know if I mess up. These people know if my musical decision wasn't the best. Like they know all these things. Like they have the knowledge of it. So that was a difficult experience because I definitely sounded horrible probably, but it taught me the discipline again. It was like, gotta go home and shed now and go listen to more records and transcribe stuff and try and just go back next year and make the best musical decisions at the time that I can. And it was a huge awakening. It was really, really helpful for that.
Those whole like I love those experiences of like, I'll be better next year. I'll because you do it, like you've done it and you're like, okay, I know what that's like. I know what it feels like to have my feet on on that street. I know what it looks like. I know the distance between the different groups playing. Like, okay, if I have to use the bathroom, I know where it is. And they're all like, these aren't like the biggest things in the world, but it
No.
makes you feel so much better knowing that like, okay, I don't have to worry about those things next year. I know what to expect. I know what those weird jazz nerds are going to be looking for, and I'm going to deliver. And yeah, I was so lucky. I got to do the Beaches Jazz Fest virtually, and
Oh,
over like YouTube. So I did it in this room right here, and it was great because you can just like, oh, I flubbed. Okay, let's do it again, and I
yeah.
felt so much better than having to like, well, do I feel so much better not having to play live? Not really, but it is nice to have like an editing skill when you know that
Yeah.
music aficionados are going to be like really looking at you. And
Yeah. Yeah, totally. How long have you been playing? How long have you been?
I started playing music in 2002, and I had a group of friends that were always talking about music. We had friends that had older siblings that were filtering through, music that we weren't really into that yet, like Green
Hmm.
Day and I'm trying
Yeah.
to think, like Smashing Pumpkins and Melancholy Infinite Sadness. Bush X was a huge band. I remember that was
Wow.
like the fourth grade. Being in elementary school with Mike Slee, who's a fantastic drummer, who's been on this podcast. Like he identified, and it's funny because he now does a lot of interviews and he talks about stories about identifying as a drummer before he had drums,
Yeah.
and it absolutely was that. So look,
Yeah.
his passion for music started to become just very infectious, and
Yeah.
when like pop punk bands started to come out, I moved to a middle school for a couple of years, and in that time, I still lived across the street from my elementary school, so I would race home to like when their bell ended, so we'd all skateboard together, and we were still connected. But all of a sudden, this band formed of these three guys,
Yeah.
and they started playing, and it was like, oh my gosh, like it's happening, like it's actually happening,
Right.
and then another friend of mine got a guitar, and then we all just started getting guitars. And one of our parents' fathers played guitar in the 70s and just really allowed us to all hang out in the basement after school. And we would all just teach each other guitar parts and guitar chords and go to the back of Guitar World. And we learned our instruments by committee. And I think Mike was left to his own devices with the drums, but the rest of us with guitar in particular, like
Yeah.
one. And I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I love this story where that Jimmy Eat World solo in American. It just takes some time. I'll think of the song. No, what the hell is that song called? Anyways, it doesn't matter. There's
Yeah.
that big solo like and there's like four parts of a guitar composition,
Yeah.
and I held the magazine, and then a friend was like, looking through, and then the best player actually learned the solo, and then once he learned it, he taught the rest of us how to play. And that committee of just trying to keep up with your friends, it was the same thing that we had done a year before with skateboarding, where one guy learned how to kickflip and then we all learned how to kickflip, kind of thing. And we just took
Yeah.
that experience that we had just kind of mastered with another practice and put it into music. And then I think it was also it was lovely in the sense that like pop punk music, all those riffs were based around really really basic chords like C chords, D chords, G chords. So just the whole group. And I think the other thing too, which is like the non-sexy story, is wood got really expensive in 2003, and we had to make a decision: are we going to skateboard or are we going to play music? Because we
Right.
can't afford both, and we all chose music. And when we went to high school, like our hockey team had exactly the amount of players to play, but our talent night or our rock night was like it was like a 6 hour event because we had so many bands, and there were people that were into pop punk, but then there was these guys that were like hanging out at the Cathedral and the Big Bop like on Queen Street that were into like the Misfits and other heavier things, and then there were groups that were into like grunge, and then there were groups of people that were into like Captain Beefheart and like super weird stuff. So it just allowed all of we were all kind of came in with this foundation. And then once we started to meet more people, we were like, hey, maybe our elementary school bands aren't the be all end all. Let's start playing with these people. And we all just kind of found groups and bands. And then a whole whack of us decided not to go to university. We just started gigging. And it
Incredible.
was good and bad. I think that there are days that it would have probably, like going to like Humber Jazz college or something like that was never even like on my radar. It was never even a thought, because in my head it's like, no, I'm already playing. Like I don't need to go to school to learn how to play this. In hindsight, maybe I should have thought about it even for 30 seconds as a viable option. I did different things. Like I got an internship at EMI Music Publishing, and learned different things like that, but just really hit the ground running, or it ran for a while. And then that high school band after 10 years broke up, and it was, all of a sudden you're just like, oh wow, I guess I gotta figure this out. And you just, keep networking, keep playing, and you just keep going from there. And then eventually one day you start a podcast in a pandemic. But
I mean, that sounds like it sounds like I always find it interesting hearing people's stories with music and learning, and because it's everybody's got their own path. Like every single musician has their own relationship with it, but we still tend to all meet on the same plane. So I just find it really interesting to hear. That's really cool. Was it hard after 10 years? Like 10 years of like being in a band? That's tough.
So our whole goal was we got a manager really early on. And that was huge because it was someone that believed in us.
Yeah.
And that was really good and really bad, because this band that I started with 3 other people, we started together, we were good. Irregularly good for 15-year-olds. And we had a female singer that was novel at the time. Right. And we didn't think of it as novelty, but it also allowed us a lot of opportunities that other bands weren't getting, because we kind of stuck out. She had a tremendous voice as well. And so we just started to get gigs. And there's a guy in Toronto who, at the time, he's an incredibly successful YouTuber now. His name is Sean Ward. And at the time, he sold comic books on the street, and he used to do comic book release parties. And he asked the band to play a show. And that was in 2004. It was at Jeff Healy's, December 4th, 2004. And then all of a sudden, we were a bar band. And we started to play, 19 plus shows, and we couldn't draw any of our friends. And so all the teachers in our high school thought it was amazing. And so then they started coming to their shows, and they were like our initial draw. And it was so cool because, first off, our teachers we look back on it now, we're like, oh my gosh, they were like 25, and they were just like, they were going to go out drinking anyways. Like, so it was really cool that they, it created a very interesting relationship for us with our teachers, because, we were playing on Tuesday, and they were there until we left. And like, so we were all really tired at school, and it was kind of fun to have this like little secret relationship with them. But our whole goal was to go to New York City and do a showcase. When we got this manager, we took the foot off the gas. We thought that like we had made it. Like people, it was just gonna, this door would open, and this door would open, and this door. It would just, and so there was a lot of development. There were a lot of lessons learned. I think that I wouldn't change anything because I wouldn't know any better. But I think that when you're young, efficiency isn't exactly the top of the order. No. But we were disciplined for the wrong reasons. We eventually kind of got pit against each other, and we all, we practiced twice a week. We were all there. We were really hard on each other, and we just started getting good differently because we became this like solid unit. Now, when you're 17 to when you're 21, like you're like 7 different humans. And when you're also trying to manage, all these rehearsals and show opportunities, and the fact that not all these shows are good, or
Right.
it takes a lot, and it's really hard when you've pretty much like committed yourself to a group. But it really did work out in the end to
Yeah.
teach us lessons. And when the band ended, that's when I realized that there were all these musicians that were going to, Humber, that were taking this different approach to music. And Mike Sleeth in particular had left his band a couple of years before, and he started to play with like all these different artists.
Yeah.
And by all different artists, I mean like all of a sudden he's in like 30 bands, and here I am playing with like the same 4 people from high school. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden it was different. It's like, oh wait, hold on, how are these, why is this different? Why didn't I even know that this was a thing? Like, I thought that you have to be with a group of friends, like you have to be like the Red Hot Chili Peppers or U2 or Metallica. And it's like, yeah, no, the thing is that we've been a band for 30 years and no member changes. And all of a sudden you start to realize that you can play with other people, and it just really changed my perspective of what music could be. And it was
Yeah.
it was a unique experience. And then I got to play with all these bands that we had met along the way. All of a sudden they need a bass player, and I just started to join. And it just changed everything. But my experience and my development with music was always because my friends were doing it. And
Yeah.
that's how it was. And it was about knowing enough music to keep up, and the goal was to be a unit. Like, we're going to be the best band. No
Yeah.
one's going to really stick out as being an incredible guitar player or anything like that. And it was a really good lesson to learn, though there are so many fundamentals that I think would have been great to pick up along the way. And watching like an Alex St. Kitts, for example, or you, TJ, like there are things that you will do on the guitar that I just absolutely love. But I think that the way that we grew up and developed is just it's so different in a sense, yet here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Meeting in the same place. It's like, yeah, it's like I mean, I always like to, make the analogy of like music is language, and we all learn it differently. Some of us are homeschooled, and some of us go to a school for it, and but we end up having the same conversations. And so it's just, yeah, it's fascinating. That sounds really really cool and informative to be in a band like that for 10 years. I had a similar experience with JP, like me, St. Kitts, him, and there's a drummer named Robin Claxton, who I believe is still drumming. I haven't talked to Robin in so long. He's such a great drummer. Yeah, and we also had Christian Bridges and Nick Ferraro. We had this huge like group. Nick is playing with Busting the Bass now. Killer band.
Cool.
And yeah, we were basically a unit for like maybe 3-4 years. At least the core of us were together for that long. And yeah, it was really inspiring because like you could just all show up at the same place and feeling different things. But then as soon as you like start playing music, it's like you become a cohesive unit of people, and you all start speaking from the same mind. And it's just a really fascinating and interesting experience to have.
Well, there's a sense of belonging that I love.
Yeah.
Like, even now, I see, like, I play in this group called Dr. Draw, and he's an incredible violin player. And I got referred to the gig from an accordion player that I play with, and we met, and he lives in this like basement theater. And it's just like so cool. He has like 2 washrooms because it's a theater, so you need men's and women's. And we got together and we performed. I learned the songs. We played. We went to Drum Tabernacle. Like, we walked there and played this. Like, show I don't know if it'll ever happen again, where it was just so insane, and the energy and the crowd and the emotions and the songs that I had learned that morning that I had rehearsed with, we played like 3 of them, yet we performed for like 3 hours with like 1 break or something. And the next time I saw them, I'm like, oh yeah, this is the gang. This is the team. I'm on the team. And there's just, I don't know, there's just this unbelievable feeling when you're just part of a unit, even if it's just like one gig, like a one-off gig or something like that. Like
Yeah.
you're all part of the same crew, and there's just, I don't know, it is a wonderful feeling to feel like you're with like-minded individuals and you're accepted for who you are, and you have a role that you must fulfill, and if you don't do it
Mhm.
right, or if you don't pull it off, it won't work. So you just gotta all kind of like pull together in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. You strip everybody of their egos and it just becomes a thing.
Yeah. Now with
Yeah.
with you performing and taking it to a professional setting,
Mhm.
I know that you've played with a lot of different people and you continue to play with a lot of different people.
Mhm.
How do you think that started for you? Do you think that um, you just got out there, eventually people took notice and they just started to call you?
Honestly, it's a really funny story. My first like legit bar gig, I was like 19, and Ricky Tilo was the dude who basically got me it. Ricky plays for Gaga, uh, along with Tim Stewart, and so me and him had become friends from a JP show like when I was like 17 or 18, and like he was like, dude, I can't do this gig. Could you do it for me? And it was like, yeah, it was like a random Saturday, and I had like 2 hours or three hours to learn all the material, and it was a bunch of stuff that I had been learning on my own for a while, but I had never done anything like in terms of that style of music. It was mainly like 90s R&B and early 2000s like R&B,
Yeah.
um, with some of those, Earth, Wind, and Fire thrown in there. And so yeah, I had like a few hours, and I was like, oh man, this is my first like legit gig. It was at Joe Mama's. Uh,
Yeah.
I loved that place. That
It's
was
so
like
cool.
second home. Um, and yeah, that was like my first legit like club gig, and so he got me into it, and then from there it kind of like blossomed into, yeah, had like 3 nights a week was playing with different bands, all playing, or similar styles of music, and yeah, then that morphed into starting to gig with artists that were singing in these bands as their day job, and then like doing their original stuff on the side, and so that's sort of how that happened. But even prior to that, it was like playing at open mics at the supermarket, and um, meeting artists just by, yeah, doing that stuff, and then from there, so it was almost on two fronts. It kind of morphed into the more professional side of things. Yeah, and then playing showcases with artists I met at the open mics, and yeah, supermarket specifically was like super informative, and like that was sort of my the door that led to playing with all these different artists. Um, yeah, and it's just like, it was accumulative. Like it just all started happening more and more and more from there.
That's amazing. I love that. I think that, and I assume you're talking about the Sunday night supermarket.
Yeah, Sunday, yes.
Man, it's those it bugs me that I didn't pick up on, hey, maybe going to the cool open mics in the city would have been a great way to meet people. I
Yeah.
never thought of and it's wonderful doing this podcast to hear of all the different people that just like Branko
Yeah.
Branko Stekek Superb would talk about being on tour with Dinosaur Bones and driving the band van in directly to the supermarket for Sunday to
Yeah.
make sure to be there. And I think what's really cool about hearing your story with the open mics and going to Joe Mama's is that basically, to start a career as a musician, and the first thing to do is show up and just
Yeah.
go to the places that are available.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it just morphs like yeah, it's a career. When you yeah, a career in music, it's like any other career. Like everything is accumulative. So like the more you do it, the more you will continue to do it. Um, and that was like a huge thing for me, was that I love Branko, man, he's the best. Um, yeah, and it really, actually, I think we started playing, Supermarket was because of JP. Like, we started playing there, and I met Steve, who's the guy who runs it, and um, yeah, and that's where I met Ricky Tilo too, and like a bunch of people. And that's my, like, if I ever get asked by like other like aspiring guitar players or musicians, I always tell them, like, find the open mics, find artists you vibe with, and just like make music with them, and from there that will translate into a professional career. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, that's incredible. I'm really glad to hear that, and it's really also really nice to hear it time and time again that there's no like secret sauce. There's
Yeah,
no backdoor club. There's no I did this or that. It's just the straight up goods. It's go to what's
yeah,
available and let it ferment.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And it's a little, I mean, it's obviously hard now, but like, um, even then, like when Instagram wasn't a thing, and it's like as big as it is now, TikTok wasn't around. So now you're seeing a whole new school of people who are getting gigs solely based on social media, um, and that's another avenue now that's opened up, for prospective musicians who are talented. And um, so yeah, it's fascinating. But I do feel like it's sort of, um, the live experience, the experience of like playing music with people and messing up and like making mistakes, because we're in such a world where like that's considered wrong.
Hmm.
Where like before it was considered a learning experience, but now it's just considered, um, this taboo thing that you're not allowed to mess up in front of other people.
Yeah, I
You know?
did a performance with a band called Kadima a couple months ago,
Oh
and we
yeah,
played at the Rose Theater in Brampton to
yeah,
no one. And
right,
I've done quite a few live stream gigs. I don't know if you've done. I'm sure you
yeah,
have, where we've
a
done like
couple,
they're really weird. Like it was
yeah,
weird to be in like the Horseshoe or Clinton's and no one's there and you're playing. But to be quite honest, I've played at the Horseshoe in front of no one, so it's kind of like, hey, I can do this. No big deal. I've done this before. But
yeah,
to do it in like a theater was like so weird because it was empty. And like it was the first gig that they were like, hey, Mike, you want to do some backup vocals on like this song and this song and this song? And I was like, this, you guys want me to, the recorded show in front of nobody? Like, and I was so nervous because it's like, oh my God, everyone's going to hear. Whereas if this place was full, like I could have been out of key, I could have been,
yeah,
and it would just look cool. Like, oh, the bass player's singing. Like, but it's like, oh my goodness, like it's gonna, I could ruin everything. And
right,
I'm taking it as a learning experience, this whole lockdown pandemic performance, because you can't really mess up in the same way and just kind of shake it off and have that to be this like one-off experience that actually might take you down this totally organic path
yeah,
that somebody after the gig goes like, what did you do over there? And you're like, oh, I messed
yeah,
up. They're like, no, do it again, do it again. And
yeah,
y-
yeah,
that that is kind of lost. But I'm hoping that the opportunity of so much individual time will will bring some sort of new caliber of musicianship to light, per se, so that when we do go back to Joe Mama's, I don't know, maybe people are a little bit more rehearsed.
yeah.
Maybe it's a bad thing, I don't know, but I'm very curious to see what's going to happen next, in a sense.
I do think it's going to have a positive effect, on the appreciation, because as somebody who's been playing in the like the club scene, and like the one-off fly dates, and like these sort of like real jobbing, um, gigs, um, it's definitely going to afford people more appreciation for what they're doing. And I think it's actually going to be very positive in terms of, yeah, like you said, people can be more rehearsed, they're going to be well practiced, and or at least a majority of them, because I know some people who haven't touched their instruments, and
Which is
um,
okay too.
which is totally cool, because I was, yeah, like before I put the EP out, like I had like a month or two where I was like touching the guitar like only when I would teach. So like
Right.
it was just kind of demoralizing the first bit, but then you realize like we were kind of all on our own like musical journey, and we're all gonna arrive at the same place, and this guy might not have the same depth of knowledge, but you're still gonna speak the same language, and whether or not whether or not they're at that level in terms of proficiency, it's you can still have a conversation, you can still make music with these people. And so I think, I'm super excited to see like the state of live music when it comes back, because I think people are gonna have a new appreciation. I know I do for it already.
Absolutely. Well, and I also want to ask you with regards to this new EP that you've put out, you've kind of put yourself in the forefront,
Yeah.
going from being a career musician. You've put yourself out, and you said, this is me, in a sense. How do you interpret what you're going to do with your music moving forward?
Right. That is a very, very, very good question. I haven't really thought about it. I know I love making it. And so doing it live is definitely something that interests me, because I musical direct a couple acts, so I love like making arrangements, and so that part excites me. So hopefully, doing like live stuff for the record, and just making more stuff like it's been very positive in that, like it's given me a lot of more confidence in my compositions, and in myself as a player. So I think going forward, it'll definitely be. It's not going to be the main thing, because I still think like I love making other people sound better. I think it's just a part of my nature to want to make an artist sound as good as they possibly can, and
Yeah.
like have that unit thing like you were talking about with people, and whether it's one date or 3 months of tour or 6 months of tour, it's like I just want to make these people sound good, and doing it in whatever way I can. And so that will always, I think, be my number one thing. But in terms of having the expression, and finding my own voice, it's been really nice. And so I think it'll always be there too, which is the nice thing. It's always going to be, now that it's out there too, the EP, that is. There's now I know what to do, because I didn't before, and I know what to expect.
Well, as a fan of yours, as I've met you and seen you as a fan and found you online, I got to say that it is really cool to watch the evolution of you individually express yourself in
Yeah.
these 1 minute videos to
Mhm.
having like an EP of music, a full body work.
Yeah.
I think that this is something that it's always great to have something out than not. And
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to if you do a EP release in a couple of months down the road, or many
Yeah.
months, who knows.
Yeah.
I will say I will be there for certain. I'm really looking forward to seeing it live. So
Thanks, man. Yeah, I've contemplated making some arrangements, and just even making like live off the floor videos of it, because I think that's something that excites me too, is just being able to be in a room again with my friends, and play music, and have fun, and be experimental with it, because I mean that's the whole point.
absolutely, and I think that not only is there musicians that are obviously going to want to do that too, but I think that there's an audience out there that wants to hear it as well. And I think that there has been an emergence of people that have really expressed the fact that there is the 3 minute pop song or the 2 minute pop song that
Yeah.
is great and it's catchy, but there is a huge musical audience, a la Snarky Puppy, Corey Wong, all these
Yeah.
different groups that are coming out that are really explaining, like that there is people aren't just there to hear someone play 1,000 notes a
Yeah.
second. They're here for the musicality of it and the
Yeah.
understanding that this is something bigger. And
Yeah.
I think that you having this out perhaps may lead to something down the road that could be something that you could never even imagine. And I'm really as a listener and a fan, I'm really excited for that when it happens.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I'm super stoked for it too. Um, if it does, and yeah, I'm just gonna keep making it, because it definitely brings me as much joy as playing live. But the thing with the record is interesting, because like I had to basically like produced and played all the other instruments on it, and so that was probably the hardest part. And I think going forward, like from now on, I'm gonna focus more on just, yeah, accruing more knowledge on the things that I know less about, which is production and how to play bass and programming drums. Like I literally started playing bass like a year and a half ago, and I fall in love with it. By the way, it is like the most fun instrument to me.
Yes,
Uh,
it's
you
so
can
much fun.
dictate an entire feeling, like it's unlike any other instrument.
It's I always there have been a couple of guitar players that I have talked to that have discovered the bass and are like, wow. And
Yeah,
see, I was just the really nice guy that invited too many guitar players, and I was like, oh, I guess I'll play bass. And then everyone just asked me to play bass, which was great. Great to happen. Great experience. And
yeah,
I love that. But I love watching incredible guitar players start playing
yeah,
bass because they have these like it's almost like they've figured out this cheat code. They're like, oh, for me to express the guitar exactly the way I want to, if I take this instrument that I don't have to express myself on
yeah,
and play the bass to support my idea, well,
yeah,
that's like the bass player's journey. It's almost like you've just taken you just start at level 55 because
yeah,
you're not trying to be the guitar player or be like I always think of it like in hockey terms, if someone's on a breakaway, you don't want your defenseman who's like your bass player to be beside you being like, "Hey, pass me the puck." You want them to be supporting, and
yeah.
I think the way that you play bass is really cool. I think it really supports your overall idea, and it's it's also fun to have like a similar instrument that's different that you're learning other
Yeah,
things to, and I imagine that it supports your guitar journey as well in a sense.
totally. Totally. Yeah. Learning, I feel like learning it, like, um, also with guitar, and instrumentation wise, like my thing when I was learning, like I didn't go to post secondary. My thing when I was learning was to learn other parts because there's this thing with singers that I've been told where some male and female vocalists will learn the opposite sex's parts. Like a female vocalist will learn a male part, and a male vocalist will learn a female part because they're just or like biologically different in terms of their vocal cords. So if you want to develop a more unique tone or sound, learning those parts will help you achieve that. So I found the same thing with learning piano or keys parts on guitar, and learning horn lines on guitar. They all accumulate in you since you have no point of reference because you're never going to make guitar sound like a keyboard, like a
Yeah.
whirly or an organ. So I try to take the same thing with bass and playing keys and stuff. It's like that stuff just completely enhances the other parts of my musicality where I maybe wouldn't focus so much on these things like harmony on keys or like rhythm on bass. So I feel like learning other things just like helps to bolster musicality. And I'm nowhere near, like amazing at either of those instruments, but it's definitely informed my musicality. And it's really just a cool journey to go down because it, yeah, enhances everything else. Makes me focus on things I wouldn't think of.
Well, and I'm sure too when you hear if you're learning the keyboard parts and
Yeah,
learning where they sit in the song and then you're playing with a keyboard player, you can kind of almost
yeah,
understand where they're coming from or what
yeah,
you need to do to react to it in a sense.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So I have a question for you I meant to ask and then I
yeah.
forgot all about it and it's not the greatest question, but it's a total I because I've seen it happen to you on Instagram. What's the experience like to receive a free guitar?
Oh man, unlike it's unlike anything I dreamed when I was like 14, like between the ages of 11 and 25, that one day I'd see all my favorite guys get like custom model guitars built for them by Ibanez and Fender, um, and yeah, it was like when the first day that I got like an actual endorsement, quote unquote, was with, first off, it was Supro, through this guy Peter Murray, who's a bass player in Toronto, incredible bass player, really really amazing guy, um, and I was like, whoa, you sent me an amp. This is incredible. Like, what do I need to do for you? What can I do? And it's just like, just keep playing things and doing stuff. And so that translated into this endorsement with the Angelico, which then bought Supro. So we're kind of all just like friends in this big family of people. It was really interesting and incredible. And like, I have like this kind of imposter syndrome thing where it's like, I don't feel completely. Sometimes it feels a little fake in my opinion, just because like it doesn't feel real, because it's all intangible. It's all like digital videos and stuff, and so to be able to receive something like that is like such an. I mean, I don't know. It might sound weird, but it sounds like it's like an honor to receive stuff like that. And forever grateful for those companies, Schecter too. Also, it's insane. I never could have imagined it. I feel like a kid again.
Yeah, well, and because guitars are something that, especially at a young age, like you save and you like idolize, and you look in the magazine and you or online, and I at one point I had like most of the colors of Fender guitars like memorized. And I'd be at like dinner parties in my early 20s, and they'd be like, I think that guitar is purple. I'd be like, no, it's midnight blue. And they're like, no, it looks purple. I'm like, don't mess with me on that. I was like,
I know my Fender guitars. Excuse me.
It's like, excuse me. Thank you for having me, but I know what I'm talking about, but no, I that's been something that when I saw that you did receive products like that online, I just, every time I see somebody get like an endorsement or a guitar show up or something like that, I got to imagine that it's got to be one of those full circle moments where you look forward to this so much, and then somebody is saying, almost like, you did it to the point where we want to give this to you. You don't have to save up for it anymore. We want you to play our guitar because you do it so well. It's got to be like just the highest honor.
It is incredibly, it is incredibly validating. But then, it's very, I mean, as you know, like validation is a fleeting feeling. So,
yeah, I know.
But it is incredibly validating. But the second I start trying to record a video with it, I'm like, sitting there for 8 hours trying to go over some ideas and stuff. But it is, like you said, it is a very honor. It's an honor to play all that stuff, and to be able to receive it is incredible. It is. Validating, I think, is the key word for it.
Well, TJ, thanks so much for doing this episode. I will continue to listen to the EP, and I look forward to the next videos. I look forward to the EP release or the live show whenever it happens. And I'd love to do another podcast with you again in person, which I'm looking forward to. I love Zoom. Zoom is a great tool, but it'd be nice to do these in person again one day.
It would.
And until then, what's next for you?
Oh man, I just started working on some more music. So hopefully I'll get some more things to come out over the summer, like little singles here and there. But other than that, man, I'm gearing up. I have my first like performance in a long time happening for the Junos in a couple weeks, and so I'm really excited about that. But other than that, literally nothing. I'm just teaching and hanging out, playing video games. That's it.
Oh, amazing. Thanks so much. Thanks for doing the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Of course. It's my pleasure. I love listening to podcasts, and I love yours too. So it's a huge pleasure to be a part of it. So I thank you.
I'd like to thank TJ for being on the podcast. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions for a guest you'd like to hear, please send us an email, allaboutthesongpodcast@gmail.com. We are on YouTube at the Sounds Like Songs Network. Please subscribe and hit the notification button if you are watching. And if you are listening, we are wherever you listen to your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you could rate and review, I will love you forever. So for TJ Whitelaw, I am Michael McTonnell. Episode 136 is in the books. We'll see you next week.